scientifically, you know, um, fixed in place. You can't change it. It's, you have your genitals, and that basically determines your gender and blah blah blah. That's kind of, um I mean, you can say that. The problem is that he's claiming it's universal and should apply to absolutely everybody, right? If he says
Yeah.
that, if that's, his,
The
you know,
issue, yeah,
yeah,
the issue with that, since you mentioned it, yes, it's right. He's basically taking the most literal interpretation possible,
yeah,
and it's like if you pull the parallel between that and, for example, law,
hmm
in the legal system, right? You have these many laws which are very vague, right? And if he was, let's say, a lawyer and he argued the literal letter of the law itself while
I mean, like the
completely
Supreme
ignoring
Court. I
intent,
mean, like that.
while completely ignoring intent, which is a huge part actually of the law itself, right?
Yeah, so exactly
And
like the
also,
Supreme
the
Court.
precedent.
Yeah.
Yes, basically, yes, the current one anyway. Uh, but yeah, and just sticking to it because that's the only way that he can make, like, justify his position, is to completely deny that there is any kind of that there is any room for interpretation, right? And there is. It's kind of like built into the system itself, right?
Well, it's more nuanced than that. People like to make it black and white. I don't think it's really black and white. What he's talking about is biology, which is not, by the way, totally black and white, right? There are border cases, there are transition areas, right? There,
Yes.
obviously there's intersex people, there are people whose DNA doesn't match, their gender identity and so on, because of whatever, because of hormone, sensitivity or insensitivity. But those are, the people like Shapiro would say, hey, those are border cases, and the vast majority of people are either male or female. I think, again, I think the issue here is that he's trying to apply his view of things to everybody. Um, I don't see a harm in people identifying as a different gender, and there seems to be a lot of fluidity in terms of sexuality in general between the genders. It's definitely not the way, black and white that he would like to portray it. And he's, I mean, to be fair to him, he's obviously coming from a religious position, and when you do that, you're pretty limited in your thinking, right? You can't really go, you can't really say, okay, gender identity is a social construct. If he would say that, which it kind of is. I mean, I would probably agree with that. You don't, check people's genitals on the, out on the street, but you kind of treat them the way they dress and behave and look. But that's not, you're not checking their genitals. So the definition of, hey, male and female depends on the genitals, clearly is not practically true, right? We never do that.
Exactly. A logical approach basically only really comes into play when you're making these kind of disingenuous arguments. And I assume that he's
Sure.
aware of other arguments as well, and he's just choosing purposefully to ignore them. But yeah, it's basically, again, it's this literalist approach. Again, when he invokes biology, when he invokes language, it's just infuriating. Like how the kind of interpretation of things uh, he chooses to do, and it works on debates with college students, and I guess his target group are people who think that college is for stupid people, whereas all the smart people don't go to college because it's uh, leftist brainwashing machine or whatever. And so yeah, that's about the level that these conversations are taking place at.